Right, and hereby I'm going to introduce Toby. He's a Senior Director of Group Treasury, Risk and Insurance. Toby joined Emirates Global Aluminium in 2008 as he carried multiple roles. It was before called Dubai Aluminium, before the merger. And he joined as a Senior Credit Risk Officer with the remits of articulating, implementing, and managing Dubai's credit risk philosophy, right? Since then, the journey continues until 2015, where Toby's portfolio was further expanded to include group tax, and in 2018, business continuity and treasury shared services. Currently, Toby's primary role is to oversee and manage the liquidity profile, risk management strategies, capital structure at EGA, and as it relates to the treasury operations of cash management, counterparty credit risk management, financial risk management, and insurance. I can go on and on and on. Thank you for being with us here, Toby.
Pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Right. I'll start with the first question to you, Toby. I was personally involved in the EGA's project since you've evaluated Concur since 2018. It was what a ride. I'm personally very proud of the project. But to start from relating to what Sheikh Fahim was talking about, how important is the digital transformation to finance? As you being a senior director in finance, please tell us, what is the importance of digital transformation in that function? And what is the long consequences if we ignore digital and digital transformation within the finance processes?
Perfect. Thanks, Dania, and good morning, everybody. Look, EGA is a different entity here in the UAE. We've been here for 45 years. We are a large industrial manufacturing company. We employ 7,500 people down in Jebel Ali and in Al Tawila, and we produce just on 2.6 million tonnes of primary aluminium. Not the stuff that you get in your kitchen or on your tyres or your cars, but the actual primary aluminium itself. So it's not necessarily a typical industrial manufacturing business in the UAE or even a conglomerate here. So a lot of our technology, a lot of our focus is obviously on the operational manufacturing process. And for that, we have grown our homegrown technology over the last 35 years to be one of the leaders in the technological space from the manufacturing side, such to the extent that we actually now export our technology to our peer group, either in Bahrain, in Indonesia, and we're looking at other areas such as Egypt, etc. So we're quite a focused company on technology transformation. In terms of finance, we have been an early adopter of technology, mainly in the treasury space. And we started our technological transition probably back in about 2010. And that was primarily looking at the complexities of the business that we were facing and projecting into the future as to where those complexities were going to arise and where we were seeing them coming from. We have a saying is that, we need to avoid Fat Finger Fridays. Whilst you're doing manual tasks, you run an operational risk, as in everything, of someone inadvertently missing out a comma, putting in an extra zero, etc. When you're only financially reporting, you can get away with that. In the treasury space, when you've actually got real money going out the door, when you're actually making real payments, or you're dealing with real live situations, that can be quite costly. So we invested quite heavily back in 2010, and we've continued to invest in that for the last 13 years now. We're on our second treasury management system. We've moved into SAP. We've recently introduced SWIFT as a payment mechanism. So we're really looking to see how we can automate things. Now, what that does for treasury is two things. One is it actually removes the human element from transactional processing. And we don't need humans today to do transactional processing. Bank account reconciliation is the main driver of a transactional processing centre. You can actually get that automated. Treasury now is the largest user of RPAs, robotic process automation, in EGA finance. We have something like 45 robots working in the back every single day doing the manual tasks. That then frees up your scarce resources to actually add more value accretive jobs. They can do the analysis, they can do the reporting, they can provide something back to the organisation more than just processing a reconciliation. So for us, it really is about using the resources that we have, which are scarce, in the best possible way. We then leverage technology to free up those resources to be more value accretive. As Dani was saying, we've started the Concur, I guess, journey back in 2018. I don't think perhaps as an organisation we were quite ready to go to that step, and we'll talk about that more later on this morning, about the learnings from that. And sometimes you can say, this is where we want to go, but not really have a clear roadmap for that. And I think that's where we found ourselves in 2018, which is why we kick-started that project again at the back end of 22, 23, when the organisation was ready to catch up with our aspirations for the technology.
Great insights, Toby. And indeed, EGA is one of the top technology adapters where they use technology to fuel the business. So thank you for sharing. Toby, if you can continue, please, the story of why did you choose SAP Concur and how do you think the solution will help EGA?
So look, I think certainly there were a number of drivers for us. One, our travel management system was still incredibly manual. We had automated the forms, etc., but that was only at the front end. So whilst you thought you had a look and feel of an automated form, it stopped after the approval process and then it was printed and then moved on from there. It made it incredibly difficult to report on and to analyse. On the expense management side, it was a bit more automated but not much more sophisticated. But neither one of those two systems talk to each other. I think probably one of the biggest obstacles to overcome, and it's not really why we looked at it, but one of the biggest obstacles to overcome is people's and department heads' inherent resistance to anyone seeing what they're actually doing in the travel space. If you don't report on it and you don't have granularity around it, then people have a view that no one knows how much you spend on your travel, no one knows how much you spend on your expense forms. So for us as a finance function, certainly it was about looking at getting some more granularity around that and getting a hold on that. If you ask 6 people in EGA how much we spent on travel last year, you'd get 7 different answers. No one could really put their hand on how much we were spending on travel. So it was about that. But more importantly, I think it was really about offering the users a better experience. It was about offering them an ability to be in charge of their own travel to a certain extent within the parameters, working with our travel partners, but having that flexibility to actually choose an airline, having that flexibility themselves to choose the hotel. Then integrating the expense side into that, it just makes their life a lot easier. So when you're on travel, the last thing, you've got expense forms coming here, you've got receipts here. The last thing you want to do when you've come back from a 7 or 10-day business trip is to wade through all your receipts, etc. So Concur allows you to instantaneously actually put those in the system to keep track of that on a real-time basis. And I think it was really the selling point for us was that user experience combined with the accounting and the framework at the back end that attracted us.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing, Toby. And during the project, there was a perfect collaboration between IT and business. I've seen right from the beginning where everybody was in the room. It wasn't led only by IT or led only by business. It was always hands by hands with both departments. Can you please tell us about the importance of having all departments in the project together, finance, HR, IT, and whoever is involved, right from the beginning until the end? Why is this important?
So look, so it's actually a very, very good question. So I alluded to the fact that we started this journey in 2018. I still recall being asked to go to a meeting in our head office down in South Tooele, which is in Kizad down in Abu Dhabi. And I think, Dani, you might have been there. And there was this great presentation on SAP Concur. And we just looked at each other and said, well, what's this for? It was being run by IT at this stage, and I have my IT colleagues here, so again, there's no disrespect meant, but it was being run from an IT project, not necessarily as a business project. And I think that was perhaps one of the reasons why we didn't get so much more traction after that, and we actually just put that project in hibernation for a couple of years, that and COVID. But if we'd had the business buy-in back in 2018, we could have beaten MAF to be one of the first adopters to this in the region, and had that up and running by the time we'd got through into 2019. But because there was that disconnect between human capital requirements between IT and finance, there wasn't really that sponsorship to take the business next forward. So I think certainly this time around, lessons learnt. Some of my team have been very, very instrumental in driving forward this project and making sure that all stakeholders are involved. Because if you don't, you get to the end of the project and someone says, well, I never agreed to that, and all of a sudden you've got discontent within the business. So we have had challenges. We've had IT challenges, we've had human capital challenges, we've had finance challenges, but as a project working team, they've managed to actually address those challenges and come up with solutions. And I think certainly the latest challenge that we had, which was at the back end, which came from, unfortunately, finance, where the solution wasn't capable of offering us what we wanted it to do in terms of our business practice. It took a concerted effort between IT, finance, and a bit of human capital to come up with a solution on how we could actually use SAP Concur in its base format to suit our requirements. And that doesn't mean actually reprogramming SAP Concur, because we know best, because whilst we have practices, we're not ever going to suggest that our practices are the best in the world or we are unique. So there had to be a solution. And it's only with that close collaboration between all stakeholders can you get a solution that's fit for purpose.
Toby, thank you so much for sharing the insights of your journey, your personal journey into the adoption of the solution. I guess one of the factors also we want to touch upon is the importance of having executive sponsorship coming back to your adoption to the solution. You were personally very involved in all steering committees, and you were very reachable to make sure that this project is successful. Can you please tell us what is the importance of having executive sponsorship in such a project?
Look, I think with such a project that does span a whole organisation, there has to be some sort of buy-in from senior management and from senior leadership. It's okay to actually have the ideas germinating as a bottom-up approach, but if you're expecting to get multiple stakeholders from multiple different business areas to buy into something that perhaps they have a natural resistance to, as I alluded to earlier, no one should look at my travel expenses or my travel, etc., because then you'll start to cut back on the CFO or say blah, 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 then it really lends some gravitas to where the company's going. It also then enables the project to seamlessly go into or be congruent with the organisational strategy. And so it no longer becomes a treasury strategy or a IT strategy or a human capital strategy. It becomes an EGA strategy. And you can only really get that if you have a sponsorship from a certain level. Without that, it's very difficult to go across multiple teams or multiple, I wouldn't say silos because we don't work in silos, but multiple business units. And so it's really looking to have that congruity with business strategy. It's really looking to make sure that multiple areas buy into the same project. Similarly, is like anything else, is that the higher you can go up that managerial chain, then you would hope that executive sponsor then would have a broad view of what's happening across the organisation as opposed to a quite a narrow functional area. And that's really important then when you're looking to roll out a solution that's going to affect, theoretically, every single person in the organisation.